Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another inks comparison video, and this is red inks comparison number 5. So I think with that, let's swap up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the description, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM and it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the color of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me when I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over. I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here and I will rinse the nib off several times and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. Now the first ink I'm going to swap up today is Diamine Terracotta. Now I know what you're going to say, it's a little bit more of a brown colour, but I do also think it has a little bit more of a redness to it. So I'm going to include that in this ink swatch. So we'll do an ink swatch here, and you can see there it's got some redness to it. It's a little bit more of a like a terracotta tile or terracotta brick. Yes, it could be classed as brown. Yes, it could be classed as red as well. So I'm going to do a second pass here over the top half, just to show the difference between a wet or a broad and a dry or a narrow writing nib. And the ink in here today is Diamine, and it is terracotta. And this is a lovely, lovely coloured ink. I do still consider this being a red, although sometimes I do consider it being a brown. So I thought I would include this one in this ink comparison video. The next ink here is Herbin, and it is Rouge Hematite. Now this is a shimmer ink, so you can see that shimmer there. So I am just going to shake it a little bit just to mix up those particles there, and then we'll do an ink swatch. So we'll do an ink swatch here, and hopefully you can see, or you will see, some of the shimmer particles or particulate there. We'll do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet or broad and a dry or narrow writing nib. And this is Herbin. And Didn't do that B very well there. And this is Rouge Hematite. But that is quite a nice red ink, and oh my god, I can already see the beautiful gold sheen forming on that ink. That I hope I am going to see a lot of shimmer. You can see it around the edge here on the poured area already. The next ink is a Diamine Firefly, and again it's got shimmer or particulate. So I will shake this, shake it a bit more, and there you can see. So you'll see here it has this beautiful, beautiful shimmer color. So I think we will do an ink swatch of that one. So do an ink swatch here. Again, this will typically not have sheen, but it will have shimmer, whereas Rouge Hematite has is more although it has got shimmer in it, it's a little bit more sheen to it. So we'll do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet and broad or a dry or narrow writing nib. So this is Diamine, and it is Firefly. But that is a very lovely, punchy, bright red ink. Very vibrant red. And it does remind me a little bit of Diamine Poppy Red, or maybe even a little bit more brighter than that. The next ink here is simply Montegrappa, and it is Montegrappa Red. So we'll do an ink swatch here. And this is quite a lovely sort of, I want to say darker red. I think, as you can see, as it's getting drier, it's more of a pinkish red. So if I do a second pass over the top half, to show the difference between a wet or broad and a dry and a narrow writing nib, and then we'll do a writing sample. So this is Montegrappa. And it's just simply red. So Montegrappa don't really have any sort of, they just go by colour names. They don't have any exotic names for their inks, at least from what I've seen so far. The next ink here is an ink from Visconti, and this is Bordeaux. So we'll do another ink swatch here. And again, this is looking a little bit more of a pinkish red. Very similar to the Montegrappa. So we'll do a second pass over the top half here, just to show the difference between a wet or a broad and a dry versus a narrow writing nib. So this is Visconti. And it is Bordeaux. And as that ink was wet, I wanted to actually say that the Visconti Bordeaux looked very, very similar to the Montegrappa Red, although now that Montegrappa Red is drying, I'd have to say that these inks look very different. And then the last ink here, it's one of my older Diamine 80ml bottles, and it is Diamine Oxblood. So we'll do an ink swatch. And this is typically an ink that I really do not use a lot of. I don't know if it's because it's got the name Blood in it. I don't know if it's because it's more of a really dark red, brownish red. I don't know. We'll do a second pass over the top half to show the difference between a wet and a broad writing nib versus a dry and a narrow writing nib. I probably should actually write with this ink a lot more. I know a lot of people that do write with it. It's just something that I typically don't. So I've got about 2/3 of a bottle of it still. So this is Diamine, and it is Oxblood. but I know a lot of people are a fan of that colour of ink, so I thought I would also include that here in this ink comparison video as well. So I think let's now take a look at these inks now that they have dried a little bit more. So the first ink here is Diamine Terracotta. Now, I did say that this can be a red ink or a brown ink. I think in a lot of cases it's more of a reddish brown or a brownish red. So I thought I would include this one here. Terracotta is tile. It's what you see on a lot of houses. Typically terracotta is normally known more of a reddish brown or brownish red. So can you see the difference between a wet and a dry, or a broad and a narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. There is a lot of difference in terms of the colour there. Can you also see shading going on? There's a lot of shading going on around the pulled area, and I will show you that there. And is there any sheen? Yes, there is. Around the edges of that pulled area, there is a little bit of gold sheen there. Not a huge amount, but there is some sheen. So yes, you are getting some sheen out of Diamine Terracotta. The next ink is Herbin Rouge Hematite, and this is an interesting ink for sure, because it is a very, very nice ink. It does have particulate in it, so again, I will show you that bottle there, that it does have all of that gold particulate that will sit on the bottom of that bottle until you shake it. So it is a shimmer, but it also does have some sheen as well. So can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. The lighter version is a lot lighter. Can you see shading? There is shading in that pulled area. And is there sheen? And I have to say yes, there is some gold sheen. You can certainly see gold sheen around here. It doesn't sheen as much on the surface. It's normally more around the edges. But that is quite a nice ink. And you can also, if I try to show you that on the writing sample, you can see it a little bit on that as well. The next ink is a Diamine Shimmertastic ink, and it's Diamine Firefly. Again, this is another ink that I do like the colour of as well. I think, to be honest, I prefer it a little bit more than Rouge Hematite. It is just shimmer though. It's not really sheen. Can you see the difference between a wet, broad and a dry or narrow writing nib? Yes, you can. There is some shading going on in the pulled area as well. Not a huge amount. But then you get this awesome amount of shimmer there, which shimmers and glistens gold on red, and I think that is a beautiful touch there. So that is a very beautiful ink, and if I show you the writing sample there as well, Diamine Firefly, you should be able to see the shimmer there as well. So it does actually look to be quite an inviting ink. The next ink I have here is a Montegrappa Red, and I did say that when I was putting this onto the ink swatch that this does look more of a pinkish red, or a reddish pink perhaps. It is, Montegrappa do list it as a red colour. I definitely think it is red, but it's more on the pinker side of red. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? You can see a little bit of difference, not a massive amount. Certainly the lighter area is a little bit more pinkish, and the dark, the sort of wetter area will be a little bit more darker or reddish. So it is an interesting colour. Is there any shading going on? Not a huge amount. You get a bit of shading around pulled areas. The writing sample here is actually quite a darker red that you will see. That was in a wet nib as well. Is there any sheen? No, there isn't, at least from what I can see. I think, again, it wants to sheen in some of this pulled area. It's just not quite able to do so. The next ink here is an interesting one. It's Visconti Bordeaux. It's an ink that I have used a lot. I've had 3 bottles, I think, of Visconti Bordeaux. Each bottle I received when I bought a Visconti pen just happened to have a bottle of a glass bottle of Bordeaux in there. Now this Bordeaux is a red wine, so again it is a red colour. Can you see the difference between a wet or broad and a narrow or dry writing nib? Yes, you can. The dry or narrow would be a lot lighter. So it is a much lighter red. I typically normally see the writing sample here, which is the wet version of the nib. So, because when I'm writing with my nibs, it puts down a lot of ink. So I typically see the darker red. Can you see some shading? There's a little bit of shading, not a huge amount though. A little bit around the pulled area. Can you see any sheen? No, you cannot. Again, it's not really one of those sheening inks. And then the last ink that I have here today in this comparison is Diamine Oxblood. And for whatever reason, this is just an ink that I have not used as much compared to a lot of other inks I have in my collection. I typically like red inks, and this is just a red ink I do not go to, and I typically, I want to say avoid. I guess I am avoiding it if I'm not actually inking it up. But I know equally a lot of people like Diamine Oxblood. So can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. There's a huge difference there. The writing sample is clearly going to be like the wet because it is a wet writing nib. Is there shading? There is a lot of shading in the pulled area here. You just typically don't see it in the writing sample. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why I just don't ink this ink up a lot. It's a very dark red. Almost, I would say, a black red. And I'm not typically that into black reds. Now, can you see any sheen here? Yes, you can. There is a little bit of sheen around the pulled edges here. Again, it's not really designed to be a proper full-on sheening ink, but you can see a little bit there. So that's my red inks comparison number 5 video. If there are any of these inks that you like, then do let me know in the comments below. And likewise, if there are any other red inks that you would like me to check out, do let me know in the comments below. So that's my red inks comparison number 5 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.